Anya stood by the window, just beside the door of her old room, watching the path that disappeared into the woods, and farther still, toward the lake hidden behind the estate. Her gaze was empty, yet inside her, images pressed and swelled, scenes she tried to suppress but that refused to leave her. Most vivid of all was the moment Elizabeth had seen them in front of the Woodbergs' villa. Her, Fred, and Kai, bound together in a picture she could only imagine through someone else's eyes. No matter how hard she tried to close her own and erase that expression from Elizabeth's face, it kept coming back, again and again, like a shadow that refused to leave the room. In the reflection of the glass, she caught her own face, pale and tired, and couldn't help thinking that Elizabeth must have felt the same that day. Several hours had passed since they'd returned from Ryan Woodberg's memorial. Kai had already fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep, the kind that follows a day steeped in sorrow and exhaustion. Anya, however, couldn't rest. She felt a heavy, gray blanket of grief spread across her chest, something she couldn't shake off. And now, as the house sank into the stillness of night, everything came rushing back with even greater force. The image of Dilara in black, weeping, a woman carrying the full weight of loss, hit her with brutal clarity. She had never before witnessed that kind of pain, the kind that is born of losing someone you love, and the thought that she, one day, could stand in that same darkness left her breathless. Even the idea of loss was hard to bear, but when she saw Fred across the church, standing with Kai, holding their daughter's small hand in his own, eyes full of quiet steadiness and love, a wave of gratitude washed through her. He was the one who had paused his life to fit into hers, who was always there, without demand, without hesitation. And in that moment, as the choir's voices swelled and filled the space with light and sound, she intertwined her fingers with his, in her mind, and sent out a simple, silent prayer for all she had been given without ever asking for it. She switched off the light in the hallway and entered the room, pausing in the doorway to look at him. Fred was folding his clothes neatly over the chair, then slipping into his pajamas, moving with that calm, grounded presence that always soothed her. Once, long ago, she could never have imagined a life like this with him, and now it seemed that a world without him would have no shape at all. Her eyes moved to Kai, who was sleeping peacefully, her breathing soft and even, and Anya wondered whether the girl had carried the weight of the day at all, or if the games with her cousins, Scarlett and little Saskia, had shielded her from the sorrow that lingered in the air. There was something tender in that realization, that Elizabeth, however reluctantly, had done nothing to stop them from spending time together. Fred had always been the one to show his love openly, to draw her close, kiss her, whisper how much he loved her and how much she meant to him, to thank her for every shared moment and prove his affection through small, steady acts of care. Her love, on the other hand, was quieter, hidden in small gestures, in wearing a dress she knew he liked, in the light brush of her hand against his, in a smile sent across a room, in promises spoken only with her eyes. Yet lately, she had felt an urge to do more, to open up, to show him, truly, how deeply she loved him. When he lifted his head and saw her reflection in the mirror, he startled slightly, then softened into a smile as she approached. She wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her cheek against his t-shirt, feeling his presence seep into her once again, and calming her from the inside out. His hands encircled her immediately, warm and steady. "You were magnificent today, and brave," he whispered, his voice low and deep, resonating within her stronger than the choir's song. She kissed him just above the heart and smiled. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how I would have made it through this day without you. I only hope that the next time I walk into a church and hear a choir, it will be for a happier reason." She wanted to tell him more, to express the full weight of her gratitude and love, but the words stalled on her lips, as if afraid that, once spoken, they would lose their strength. He looked at her with gentle concern, his eyes softening. "What is it?" he asked quietly. She stepped back slightly, just enough to see his face, yet stayed within his embrace, needing his touch to bear her own honesty. Her fingers traced the edge of his shirt, unconsciously, as she gathered the courage to speak. "Today, during the service, I thought about how grateful I am for you. Not just there, but here, that we have each other. And Kai." Her eyes filled with tears, and through a trembling smile, she whispered, "I love you, Fred, more than I know how to show." His smile was her answer, warm and tender, full of quiet devotion. "And I love you, Anya. I love you too," he said. And she rose on her toes to kiss him, looping her arms around his neck, her fingers slipping through his hair, while her other hand rested over his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart beating in time with hers. His hand slid down her back, beneath her robe, gathering the thin fabric of her nightdress, leaving trails of warmth against her skin. They kissed slowly, deeply, as if time itself had stilled. When they finally broke for breath, she took off her glasses and gently tugged his hand. "Come," she whispered. "Let's sleep. I know you're tired. I'm exhausted too." He nodded, and they lay down together, facing one another, with Kai between them, her calm breathing merging their heartbeats into the rhythm of one family. His hand draped across her waist, while Anya caressed his face, her fingers tracing his lips, as if committing them to memory. With every soft kiss he pressed into her palm, with every quiet motion, she wanted him closer, wanted never to lose him, and to hold him forever in that fragile, perfect space where only the three of them existed. James's body protested that day, quietly, yet insistently. He hadn't eaten a single bite since lunch, though he knew that even the smallest crumb of food would have felt like a stone in his stomach. He had no appetite, nor did he want one, because the hunger he felt was of a different kind, the kind that doesn't stem from emptiness in the belly, but from the heaviness in one's thoughts, from the anxiety spreading through the body like a shadow that won't lift. His head throbbed, weariness echoed in his chest. His body, drained and powerless, found no strength to rise from the bed and walk to the kitchen. He didn't care for food, or rest, or the world. The only thing he wanted was sleep, a brief escape into silence where nothing existed. And yet, even in that weakness, in that desire for everything to vanish, a thought resurfaced, one that tormented him more than hunger or pain. He wanted to talk to Anya. He was his own worst enemy. The moment her name appeared in his mind, he would scoff at himself, call himself a fool. Why did his thoughts always return to her? What was it in him so bound to a woman who wasn't his? What a weakness, what a disgrace, to sit alone in the dark, on the edge of the bed, chained by his own thoughts and self-pity. This was the life he had chosen, wasn't it? A life he had crafted for himself. Had he chosen, consciously, to suffer like this? Questions circled his mind without order or meaning, crashing against the walls of his awareness. And worst of all, none of them brought relief. He wanted to scream, to shatter his own silence, to explode in the sound of despair. He told himself he was mad, pathetic, a miserable wretch who deserved to drown in self-pity. He told himself to cry, to collapse to the floor and twist in his own pain, because that was his true, fragile, broken self. But even that inner voice, harsh as it was, couldn't set him free. He had to break the chain of thoughts tightening around him like iron cuffs. He had to stop destroying himself. He needed someone, a touch, a word, an anchor. He glanced over his shoulder and saw his wife sleeping peacefully, turned away from him. She was there, only a few steps away, and yet he felt she wasn't close enough, that whatever he needed, she couldn't give it to him. On the nightstand beside the bed lay a phone, silent, unreal, and yet somehow threatening. He knew he could reach for it, dial the number of the room down the hall, and hear her voice. What would he even say? "Help me. I miss you. Just hold me." But he couldn't. He dared not. She was there, with the man she loved, and that man wasn't him. What if Fred answered the phone? What lie could he invent? That he dialed the wrong number, that he was looking for someone else. And who would he even be lying to, when the truth would have been as visible as a scar? With disgust, he thought of himself, pitiful, wretched, worthless. His breathing was shallow. He ran his hands through his hair, tugging at it as if he could pull the pain from his skull. He tried not to think of her, to erase her face from his mind, but the more he tried to forget, the clearer she became. He didn't understand why her return had shaken him so deeply, why it felt as though everything inside him was falling apart. He knew the pain he felt wasn't her doing. It was his own creation. He was the one hurting himself, the one destroying what little remained of him. She had moved on. He was the one still trapped in the past. Hatred seeped into him like poison, first directed at her, then, in a moment of cruel honesty, at himself. "I hate you," he told himself. "I hate you, Anya." But he knew that wasn't true. The truth was far worse. He hated himself. With that bitter realization, he suddenly stood up, as if tearing himself from the bottom that had been holding him down. The room remained cloaked in darkness, the phone its only source of light, the only point of orientation, both alluring and dangerous. He placed his hand on it, feeling its cold surface, and knew he didn't need it. He must not call her. Why had he even thought of it? And yet, he remembered the phone number of her room, though he had never written it down. It had remained etched in his memory as a strange rhythm, a melody she had once repeated to him, a melody that now returned with haunting clarity. He lifted the receiver. His fingers moved on their own, quickly dialing the number. His breath caught in his throat. The first ring sliced through him like a knife, and then, suddenly, as if struck by lightning, he slammed the receiver down and stood motionless, helpless and furious. "What are you doing, you idiot?" He bit his lip until it bled, too weak even to drink water, with no will to quench his thirst. At last, he returned to bed slowly, like a thief sneaking back into his own prison, and sank his head into the pillow. He stared up at the mirror on the ceiling, the same one he had looked into 1,000 times before, searching for meaning, for comfort, for something he never found. He knew his thoughts were sinking again into the same mire, that he lacked the strength to stop them, and that the only truth left to him was this: he was no longer strong enough to save himself. James watched Anya as she entered his room, and the smile that lit up her face was both a gift and a curse. He knew that every word he was about to speak would kill that smile and draw darkness into the eyes that had so often been his refuge, and that knowledge tore him apart from within. It wasn't fair, not in the slightest, because she was the least to blame for what had happened, and yet the weight of his truth was hers to bear. He himself had been shaken, almost broken, when he first found out, and it had taken him time to gather himself, to even comprehend what the news meant. And now, as she stood before him, every hope of finding words that would not wound her seemed laughable, small, and meaningless. He wanted her with all his heart, so much that he had been ready to confess everything to Elizabeth, to destroy the foundations of his old life for a chance to be with Anya. But life rarely allows plans to unfold as one imagines them. And now, he stood before a wall he had no idea how to break. She approached him slowly, and he, powerless to resist, accepted her kiss as both salvation and punishment. He couldn't turn her away, not that he wanted to, because her lips on his were the only thing that still made sense. Her hand slid through his hair, her fingers curled around his neck, and he pulled her into his lap, wanting to hold her as close as possible, as if touch could stop her inevitable departure. His hand traced down her arms, and every tremor of her skin beneath his fingers was both joy and pain, the proof of how deeply she wanted him and how completely he was about to lose her. When she drew back for a breath, he couldn't let go. His lips sought hers again, and in that moment, nothing existed but her. He kissed her greedily, desperately, as if it might be the last time, as if he could absorb every breath, every shadow of her smile, and every whisper of her body before it all disappeared. The thought that the door might not be locked flickered briefly through his mind, but he dismissed it instantly. It didn't matter who might walk in or what might happen, because their small world existed only within their embrace, within the feverish need for time to stop. He held her tightly, as though fighting fate itself, and yet it was he who finally pulled away. He cupped her face in his hands, her cheeks flushed, her eyes burning with desire, and in that beauty he felt unbearable sorrow. He smiled a broken smile, pressed his lips to her forehead, as if that gesture could preserve her innocence, before he spoke the words that would shatter her. "I love you," he whispered, his voice fractured, his gaze dropping to the floor, as though ashamed of his own feelings. Anya looked at him with concern, reaching out to lift his chin gently. Her eyes, glistening and full of foreboding, searched his face for an explanation. "I love you too," she said, and there was more fear than joy in her voice. "James, what's wrong?" His nothing rang hollow, an empty lie, because his trembling voice and lost expression spoke louder than words. When she told him not to lie, that he had to tell her the truth, he wanted to run, to bury every thought and simply hold her, but he knew he couldn't. "I don't want to tell you," he whispered, brokenly. "I don't want to hurt you." Her faith in him was so pure, so painfully naive in that moment. "How could you hurt me? You love me." And he did, more deeply than he had ever believed himself capable. But love could not soften the blow of truth. He spoke of her face, of the hands that fit perfectly in his, of the eyes that haunted him and the smile that bound him. He spoke like a man saying goodbye, a man trying to find his last words before everything fell apart. And when she, her voice trembling, begged him to tell her that it couldn't possibly be as terrible as he feared, he knew that no hope could soften what was to come. "Elizabeth is pregnant." It was as if the world stopped, as if her soul had been drained from her body. Her smile, her eyes, everything fell silent in an instant. He felt as though he had whipped his own heart, even though she was the one struck down by the words. "Oh," she breathed, and for a long time after that, she couldn't say another word. Her face was blank, terrifyingly blank, and in that emptiness he found his greatest fear. He tried to speak, to explain, but every word he uttered was only salt poured onto an open wound. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, broken, and the bitter irony in her single word of congratulations was so sharp it nearly brought him to his knees. He took her into his arms, pulled her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder, her tears soaking into his skin. He tried to hush her, to calm her, whispering that everything will be all right, even as he knew he was lying, because nothing would ever be all right again. She sobbed, saying that now he had a child, and she could no longer stay in his life, that she would always be the aunt, never the mother, and he knew that was the truth, one he could never change. His despair deepened with every word she spoke, because he didn't know how to let her go, nor how to let go of himself. He told her he had to try with Elizabeth, that he couldn't abandon the child, that he couldn't let it come into the world without him. And he was right. He knew he was, but at the same time, he knew that it would cost him Anya. She stood, took a step back. His protest, his broken, "You are everything to me," was sincere, the naked truth of his heart. But Anya already knew there was no way back. She kissed him desperately, as if trying to imprint everything they had been and everything they would never be into that final touch. It was a prayer of farewell, a kiss from which the death of their love was born. She pulled away, breathing heavily, her eyes downcast and her voice empty. She apologized, said she shouldn't have, but he answered that they both had needed it, and in those words was no more pretense. Still, she knew she had to leave. Her "I have to go" hung in the air like a sentence, and when she reached the door, when her hand touched the handle, it felt as though she were turning her own heart. Her "see you" was a lie, because they both knew that her last look over her shoulder, lingering and final, meant the end. When she was gone, she left him in a silence heavier than any words could ever be. His knees gave way, and he sank onto the sofa, grateful not to have collapsed to the floor. That was it. Nothing remained. The world they had so carefully and secretly built crumbled in a single instant, and all that was left to him was the bitter taste of goodbye. It was over.